Okay. Mr. Mybeck. Oh, I didn't see your counsel. Good afternoon, Mr. Masur.
Deputy Chief Justice, good afternoon.
Yes, I didn't realize you were there, so sorry about that.
No. I know that you had better things to do this afternoon than to realize someone in Cape Town. It's good to see you, Chief Justice.
It's good to see you. Thank you. And thank you for the cooperation also for us to be able to sit this evening.
It is well.
Thank you. Mr. Mybeck?
Yes, Chairperson, you will recall that at the last sitting of Mr. Molefe's evidence, he asked for the opportunity to put in an affidavit relating to the Abalozi settlement. He has done that. We intend to take him through that affidavit, and then there are a select number of other issues that we wish to deal with, whereupon presumably Mr. Masuku would conduct his re-examination.
Yes, okay, no, that's fine.
I don't know if Mr. Molefe needs to be sworn in again.
Please administer the oath of affirmations.
Please state your full names for the record.
Brian Molefe.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed affirmation?
I have no objection.
Do you affirm that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you. Okay, you may proceed,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mybeck.
Chairperson, there's something I need to place on the record before I do so, if I may. You may recall that when I was leading Mr. Molefe, I questioned him about the cession of the T-System computer contract to Zestalor. And I ultimately took him to the Zestalor session, which he had signed, and there were some questions that I asked him. In the context of doing that, I read to him paragraph 5.12.3 of Mr. Mohammedi's affidavit. And that paragraph ends with the sentence that says, both Zestalor and Innovent are partly owned by Salim Essa, a well-known associate of the Guptas and a majority shareholder of Trillion Capital Partners. It was in that context that Innovent was also then roped into things. This caused Innovent's attorneys on the 12th of March, K.A. Mabani Cooper, to write a letter to the Secretariat where they took exception to that. They said that hadn't been proven in evidence. They said, in fact, Mr. Marwe had made a similar allegation, and they were served with a Rule 3.3 notice, and they had put in an affidavit. Understandably, they were aggrieved by that. They made reference to the fact that it was defamatory and might cause business complications. In response to that, on the 24th of March, I caused the Secretariat to write this letter, which I'd like to read into the record, if I may.
Yeah.
It's addressed to Mr. A. Cooper of K.A. Mabani Attorneys. It's headed Innovent Retail and Asset Management Solutions Innovent. 1. Further to your letter dated 12, in brackets, but received on 15 March 2021, members of the Commission's investigation team have determined that Innovent was not partly owned by Mr. Salim Essa. 2. As he is duty-bound to do, Advocate Mybeck SC will formally place this on record when Mr. Molefe is recalled as a witness before the Commission, in brackets, on a date in the near future that you will be advised of. 3. We trust that this will resolve the issues raised in your letter under reply. Should you ever require anything further, please contact Mr. Mybeck or Advocate Mybeck directly. We trust that you will find this in order. Yours faithfully, the Secretary. We then also caused an email to be sent to Mr. Cooper. I understand that he acknowledged receipt earlier today, advising him that the statement would be made on record. What we then thought was 4 o'clock, but no doubt he would understand why it's a bit late. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Mr. Molefe,
If I may, Chairperson, on
Yes.
this matter, I think this underscores the problem that we had, where I was expected to answer questions on things that I was not involved in, on conversations that took place with people that happened in my absence. And I remember that the commission did not seem happy that I was reluctant to drag myself into conversations and issues that I did not know anything about. If I had, I may have been cited as a party to this damages claim that they are now claiming. And so, Chair, I wish to request that in instances where I do not have any information, do not know, or a meeting took place in my absence, that really I be assisted by the commission to desist from even offering an opinion, because it may be used later on if I'm wrong on things that I do not know.
Well, I understand what you are saying, Mr. Molefe, and I think it's consistent with some of the remarks you made previously when you were asked for comment, if you had any, on things that may have been said by people discussing issues and maybe mentioning your name when you were not there. I think I did say last time, but I think it may well be that if one understands what you are saying in a certain way, one might take a different approach. I think I said to you last time, some of the things that were being mentioned to you to give you a chance to comment on are things that may well have an impact or an effect on the evidence given by other people, but that effect might well, because they may have been talking about your name, maybe it might mention your name, and there may have been a view to say, if you were not told and given a chance to comment on those things, even though you might not have been in such a meeting or in such a discussion, you might complain to say, but why is this evidence being taken into account, maybe to make certain findings which mention my name in circumstances where I was not given a chance to say something. So it might be out of caution, you know. But it may well be that your statement amounts to saying, look, if you know that I was not there, I was not party to that discussion, I'm not going to complain if you make whatever you make out of that discussion which involved my name without me being there. But you understand, people are talking about you, you are not there, but whatever their evidence is might well have to be taken into account. So there might have been caution to say, we don't want anybody to say afterwards, but at least you should have told me that certain people were saying the following about me. Maybe I could answer and say, that one was falsely saying ABCD about me because we have had issues in the past or something like that. You know, I'm making an example. So it's not out of trying to put you in a difficult position, but as I say, it may well be that what you are saying amounts to saying, as long as I was not there, I'm not going to comment, so whatever you ask, just take into account that I don't wish to comment on things that people may have discussed about my name when I was not there, and then that can be taken into account.
Yes, I understand, Chair, but you know, the problem really is instances where people who are talking do not have first-hand information and were not involved in the issues at all. So it is somebody repeating what somebody else said for the third time, and I'm supposed to comment on that, Chair. I think, I don't know if in the commission that is good quality evidence, but when two people who do not have first-hand information are talking at a dinner between themselves about what they heard somebody else say, it is very difficult for me to comment, Chair, because it may have been twisted in the process, or it may not be true, and so on. And I do not know where they had it from. And they don't say where they had it from. So I just asked Chairperson that the evidence of people who heard from other people who were talking in a corridor somewhere about something that they had heard and they do not have first-hand information, that it should really, Chairperson, should not have a lot of weight when you finally make your decisions.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Chairperson, can
Yes.
I just add something relevant
Yes.
to the current discussion?
Yes.
It relates to when the commission sends documents to us for Mr. Molefe to consider. I think it's very important that that is also, it's a complaint that I've made in almost all my appearances for Mr. Molefe, that we get new documents, or at least we get new documents a day before his hearing.
Yes.
And so it does give an uncomfortable impression that the late giving of these documents is intended to sort of catch him on the loose, or to
ambush him.
Ambush him, yeah. And so what he is mentioning now is, it's very important for the commission to consider just being fair in giving a witness time to consider the information that it is considering. I'm just adding to what the current debate is.
No, that's fine. If there is any issue or about which you received documents late, Mr. Molefe, and you don't think you have had enough time to consider it, just say so, and you'll be given a chance to deal with it when you have had a chance. If you receive them late, obviously the legal team will respond to saying whether this is something that was received late or this was just a resending of a document that had been sent much earlier or whatever. But the idea is certainly not that anybody should receive documents late so that when they are questioned, they have not had enough time to prepare. That's not the question, that's not the approach. But I know Mr. Masuku is not saying that is the case, but he says, it could give rise to that impression.
And Chairperson, it's not necessarily new documents.
Yeah.
But when you get sent a thick pile of documents that had been sent last year in September, the night before you come to the commission, I mean, those issues, I consider them that because when I was given the notice to come here, there were really 3 issues on the table. And now these documents contain other issues, and I'm not sure if they're going to be dealt with. And I do not want to waste the commission's time by keeping on asking to go and consider those documents. At the same time, it is unfair for me to not have refreshed my memory by reading the documents properly if the matters are going to be dealt with in the commission.
No. Fair enough. I think as we go along, where you feel uncomfortable because you didn't think those issues were going to be part of today, raise that and let's deal with each one on its merits. Okay.
Mr. Chairperson, perhaps I could just explain something as well, and I'll get the exact date. So you would know that the Secretariat, the people involved with the documents, have a pipeline. I mean, every day every day they're preparing bundles for the hearing.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to get a slot other than the day before.
Yes.
But what happened in this case, when we added documents to the bundle, that was done a long time ago, and one of the investigators will give me the date. So in preparation for Mr. Molefe's recall, we said we're going to add these documents to the bundle, and we emailed them to him some time ago, weeks ago. It is true then that yesterday, or maybe even during the course of the day, the actual bundle itself was added to. In other words, with this pagination. But the documents themselves had been sent some time ago, and we constrained to do it that way. So when you're told that documents were only received yesterday, yes, that's in the form of the bundle as you have it before you. But the actual documents that I'm going to question Mr. Molefe about, he got some time ago.
No, that's fine. I know about the challenges in terms of the preparation of bundles. I've previously instructed the Secretary to get that issue resolved so that there are no undue delays in the preparation of bundles. I'm going to find out from him what the position is.
No, it certainly it's not a criticism from our side.
Yes.
I don't think it's a problem.
Yes.
As long as the legal teams take the trouble of sending the documents before, then it's really just a matter of pagination. So, I mean, from our perspective, we understand entirely that the people in that department obviously need to deal with bundles on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, I think the problem might be associated with the number of people who are assigned to the duty. And I have said that problem should be resolved. So it remains a problem if we might not be able to deal with some issues because documents were received by witnesses late, that kind of thing. So, but let's see as we go along. In the end, we want to make sure that there is fairness.
Yeah. Just for the record, Chair, I mean, it's not just about preparation and so on. It's also when you get a summons to come to the Zondo Commission, you have to psychologically prepare yourself. And you go through the stuff and you prepare and you think of all possible questions that can be asked. And then at 10:15 in the evening, late at night, you get a call from the lawyer to say, go and check your email, there are new documents. And that just messes you up psychologically.
No, I understand that completely. The better situation is that there should be a certain number of days by when you have got everything you need and you know all the issues that will be under discussion, that will be dealt with, so that's the better situation which we should strive for. And I think which at some stage in the past was possible to achieve with many witnesses, but there have been some challenges in recent months. But let's see how we go on, and where you feel that you were not, you didn't think certain issues would be dealt with, or you were not ready for them. Let's take it from there.
Agreed, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. Mybeck.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Molefe, can we start with your affidavit?
Yes.
Chairperson, you'll have in front of you Transnet Bundle 5 Exhibit BB22. I understand that
before that, Mr. Mybeck, you mentioned that after you are done, Mr. Masugu may or will wish to re-examine. I just want all of us to be on the same page, more or less, what kind of time we think we are going to need this evening. How long do you think you will be on your side?
Not more than 45 minutes, Chairperson.
Not more than 45 minutes. Mr. Masugu, what's your position? Is it that you will need to re-examine, or you may need, depending And if you may need, do you have an idea how long you might take?
Deputy Chief Justice, I will listen to the 45 minutes of this of Mr. Maibek's I called it cross-examination, but it's leading evidence.
Yes.
And then depending on what questions he asked, I may wish to ask Mr. Molefe to one or two questions.
Yes.
So I certainly won't be long. I won't be asking him on the totality of the evidence that he has been asked in the commission, but just one or two issues that may be necessary to get on the record.
Yes. Okay, no, that's fine. That's helpful. I just wanted us all to have some idea of how long we might need to be. Okay, Mr. Maibek.
Thank you. Mr. Molefe, at page 97, you'll find an affidavit, your Ebelosi affidavit.
Yes.
That runs up until page 102. You see it's 405.97.
Yes.
It runs up to 405.102.
Yes.
It includes a number of annexures that run up until page 405.143.
Indeed.
You see that?
Yes.
Could I ask you please to go back to page 405.102? And would you confirm that you deposed to this affidavit on the 29th of March, presumably that should be 2021?
I do confirm.
And do you confirm the truth and accuracy of this affidavit?
I do confirm.
Chairperson,
So we just need to confirm that it's 2021, not 2020, eh?
Yes, my apologies.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Maibek.
could I ask you, Chairperson, to admit into evidence Mr. Molefe's affidavit dated 29 March, should be 2021, commencing at page 405.97 as Exhibit BB 22.6.
The affidavit of Mr. Brian Molefe, which starts at page 405.97, is admitted as an exhibit and will be marked as Exhibit BB 22.6.
Mr. Molefe, what you do, and I think very usefully in this affidavit, is to set out and attach all the documents, so it makes it easy to take you through it.
Yes.
But what I propose to do is to jump straight into page 101, paragraph 9. Are you there?
That's page 405.101.
Correct, Chairperson.
Yes.
And this is really what the controversy is about and what you were asked to address. It says at paragraph 9, on the 4th of August, I signed a deed of settlement relating to the dispute between Transnet and Abelosi. That's the order that we've seen. This was to settle all disputes between the parties in litigation under case number 10/43494. You would confirm that? That's a document we dealt with last time.
Yes.
Then, if I can take you to...
But Chair, just to recap, because if we just go to the settlement, we may forget exactly what had happened.
Yeah.
And what had happened was that Abelosi had won a tender to provide services. They did provide services. The information...
I'm just trying to think whether they had won a tender or they had been given a tender.
Well, I'm not sure what had happened, but they were employed.
Yeah, because I seem to think there were no competitors, but I may be wrong.
Yes, no,
okay.
I would not know how, but
Yes.
they had a contract whereby
They were awarded.
work to do at Transnet. They did the work. However, Transnet disputed that they had done the work, and they had evidence that when I arrived, they showed evidence through General Duga that the work had been done. In the meantime, they had been blacklisted, and they were feeling very aggrieved. And as a result of that, there was a court case, 110-43494 in the Gauteng High Court, And when I investigated the matter, I found that their blacklisting had not been proper and that it was unfair and that they should not have been blacklisted in the first place. The blacklisting was the blacklisting of all of Abalozi, its directors, GNA, in their personal capacity and any associated companies. That is how the blacklisting read. So all of these people were blacklisted like that. Because I was advised that the group chief executive has the power to rescind the blacklisting, I did so because I felt procedurally and as well as substantively the blacklisting had been unfair. And that is what led to what we are now getting into, which is the settlement.
And perhaps you could just keep your finger there at 101, the deed of settlement that you find, and it's something that the chairperson will be familiar with, that's at 137, Mr. Molefe.
Page 137.
All right. You confirm that? Headed in the South Gauteng High Court, Johannesburg.
Yes,
All
that
right.
is the deed of settlement.
And you signed it, we see, at page 138. All right.
Yes. And
if I could ask you please to go back to page 101. You say at paragraph 11.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Sorry, Chair.
Maybeck.
It is important.
Sorry, Mr. Molefe. I see your counsel is not there on the screen, but I don't know if he hears us. Mr. Masugo, are you able to hear us? You are not appearing on the screen.
Yeah, no, I'm following.
Oh, you're following. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. No,
Yes.
that's all right. Okay. Okay, you may continue.
yeah, I think it is important to note that in that deed of settlement, it says that Transnet and Abalozi have agreed to settle all disputes between them in this litigation on the following terms. In this litigation, referring to that case number.
No, absolutely. And you said that at paragraph 9 in your affidavit, at page
Yes.
101, which we've gone
Yes,
through.
yes.
All right, then at paragraph 11, you say no payment was made under the deed of settlement of 4 August.
Yes.
And then at paragraph 12, and this seems to be a key paragraph.
Yes.
On 16 October 2014, Abalozi indicated that they would issue a bill of costs and proceed with a review application.
Yes.
They also indicated that the settlement agreement on 4 August excluded the following.
Yes.
1, loss of revenue from Transnet of 250 million, loss
Yes.
of revenue from SASS of 387 million,
Yes.
loss of revenue from G Fleet of 82 million, and pain and suffering arising from defamation of 700 million.
Yes.
Now, what
That comes to about I think about 1.4 billion rand.
yeah. And what you're referring to there is the letter from Abalozi
Yes.
at page 139, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Which outlined their next course of action, which is to institute these actions. Yes.
And then what you say at page 102, at paragraph 13, these additional claims were in the amount of 1.4 billion.
Yes.
They proposed a settlement of 40 million, which they considered to be fair restitution and compensation, including legal fees incurred in all matters with Transnet.
Yes.
Then you say, on the 16th of January 2016, I agreed without admission of liability to offer Abalozi Risk Advisory Services 20 million in full and final settlement of all claims,
Yes.
costs against Transnet. This was accepted by Abalozi on 22nd of January 2015.
Yes.
I'm of the opinion that the settlement of 20 million was reasonable under the circumstances. I deny any suggestions of impropriety on my part.
Indeed.
And as I understand the nub of your case here, is you say, look, these people were threatening to sue us for another 1.4 billion.
Yes.
And I considered that a settlement of 20 million was reasonable.
Yes.
All right.
Especially that I was convinced that it was Transnet that was at fault.
So what I just wanted to point out to you, if you go to paragraph 12, is, as you know, Abalozi's claim it brought a counterclaim, and it sued for loss of revenue in respect of a whole lot of contracts. As I understand it, they're now listing other contracts which weren't part of their counterclaim. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Now, Mr. Todd's evidence was that all of those claims would have prescribed.
Well, I'm not aware of that.
And then you say...
I assume you know what prescribed means.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
they had been overdue for over 3 years. The impression that I had...
In other words, could not be enforced in a court of law anymore.
Yes, yes. Chair, the impression that I had is that the loss of revenue and all of these claims had actually occurred between the period where they were blacklisted and the time that we were settling. That is the impression that I had. I may have been wrong, but that is the impression that I had.
But did you not consider it necessary to first to say, let's settle the claim that is in court, which has been filed in court, that we know about, settle that. If they have other claims, let them make their claims. Let's instruct attorneys, lawyers, to look into these claims and collect whatever evidence from us and give us advice, legal advice.
You will remember, Chair, that even when I made that offer, it was on advice from the legal department that it was reasonable.
From the internal legal department?
From internal legal department, yes. That it was a reasonable offer to make. So I would presume that the legal department would have looked at issues of prescription and so on, which are quite technical. From where I was sitting, it was a business decision that said, rather than be involved in litigation and defending litigation of 1.4 billion, when you know that we did not act, our action on this matter or our handling of the matter was not professional, why would you want to go and defend 1.4 billion rand claim rather than settle? Chair, there was no point in fighting for the sake of fighting.
No,
just because I'm a fighter, I can take them on, so bring it on. It is a destructive attitude. If we know, why waste the court's time? Go to court and waste the court's time when you know that the evidence of their work had been hidden.
Mr. Molefe.
But Chair, also, it would be useful perhaps for the commission to find out why was that evidence hidden in the first place? That led us to where we are. That led us to this discussion. Why was the evidence hidden in the first place? And I think the answer to that question is very, very deep.
Did you previously tell us who, to your knowledge, was responsible for hiding it?
It was a TFR and
TFR.
Yeah, Transnet Freight Rail, and somebody at TFR contacted our head of security, who is General Doka, who I had asked to investigate the matter. He contacted him Nicodemously, if you like, and said there is evidence that those people did their work, and I can provide it to you, and he did. And we got the evidence. I even presented it to the risk committee.
Mr. Molefe.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to you know that one of Abalosi's claims was a defamation claim. If you have a look at page 405.134,
yes,
it says there at paragraph 30.5, it talks about articles that were published in the Mail and Guardian. 30.5, as a result of the said defamation, The plaintiff has been damaged in his reputation, goodwill, and character in the amount of 600 million rand. Do you see that?
Yes.
And do you see also that in relation to the blacklisting, if you have a look at paragraph 31.4 at page 135, it says, as a result of the defendant's Molefe conduct, all the state departments and or entities which were intending to conduct business with the plaintiff ceased from considering the plaintiff. And then it claimed 300 million. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right. Now, you talk about...
But Mr. Myberg, the defamation in their counterclaim related to that particular case.
Yeah.
The defamation later on
Yeah.
was something else, in my understanding.
So when you say, if we go back to paragraph 12, they said they're going to proceed with a review application in relation to what?
Chair, that is what was in their letter. That is what they said.
But what review application, Mr. Molefe?
The review of the Transnet's conduct, I don't know what review it was. My interest in the matter was to settle the 1.4 billion rand.
So your evidence is you settled for 20 million in circumstances where you didn't even know what review they were going to bring?
No, in circumstances where the legal department of Transnet had considered the issue at hand.
The legal department of who?
The legal department of Transnet, because they advised the settlement.
We can find no trace of that, Mr. Molefe.
Come again?
We can find no trace of that.
Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I asked for it as well.
Was it a written legal opinion?
No,
advice?
it was, you see, Chairperson, this letter that I wrote would normally have been accompanied by a memo from the legal department recommending to settle. As you have seen in these documents, even at ESCOM, my style is never to take a decision alone. So I would never sit alone and decide that I'm going to pay so-and-so 20 million. It has to come from the operations. And they have to say, well, we recommend that you do this. There is hardly anything that I did without a recommendation. So it is unlikely that this settlement letter was written by me without a recommendation. And I'm quite adamant that they must have been a recommendation.
I assume that if somebody in the legal department prepared a memo that was going to be sent to you or given to you, it would be a senior member of the legal department.
Yes, usually
either the head or somebody.
The head of legal, yes.
The head of
just,
legal.
Just like this other, the settlement is accompanied by a recommendation. Even the payment is accompanied by a recommendation. Everything is done on recommendation. There is, I can't think of something maybe that I decided on my own and decided to do. What I discovered yesterday, Chairperson, just out of interest, is that I was in the commission being accused that I unilaterally decided to cancel Glencore's contract. What I discovered yesterday is, in fact, that was recommended by Clive Decker, CDH, Clive Decker Hofmeyer. And for the first time in the last 2 days, I found that document where they actually say you must settle, and where they actually show how the 2 billion rand is calculated. And in fact, Chairperson, that is in the commission's document. But we spent half a day where I was being accused here of having unilaterally decided to cancel, where there was a clear recommendation from CDH, from the lawyers. I hardly ever do things without recommendation in my role as chief executive. That is my style, Chair.
Yes. Well, just touching on the last point about the document you found, are you going to send it through, particularly to the ESCOM team?
Chairperson, it
the
is
secretary?
paragraph, I think, 45 of CDH affidavit to the commission.
Yes.
They confirm that they made that recommendation.
Yes.
I think it's 45 to 53.
Yes.
If we look at their affidavit to the commission itself. So, I mean, I can go onto the internet and download it and send it again.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to, I know there's a lot of documentation, as you know, there are bundles and bundles and bundles.
Yeah, sometimes
can happen.
I get nightmares just thinking how you're going to write the report from all this information coming from all angles.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of documentation. The last time, a few weeks ago, when I wanted to find out about how many thousands of pages in terms of the transcript is,
Yes.
I was told of 52,000.
Yes.
But please do that, or ask your
I will do
lawyers
that, Chair.
to send and say, this is what our client has recently discovered, blah, 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 or send it yourself. That would be fine, just so that the legal team is under ESCOM.
In fact,
is
I
alerted.
have it on my phone. We'll do it before we leave.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay.
Mr. Molefe, what I was getting at is you see there's 3 loss of revenue claims here.
Yes.
Well, in their counterclaim, Abelozi brought 3 loss of revenue claims as well. You'll note large figures, 50 million, 40 million, etc.
Yes.
And those were settled for nothing, only for costs.
No, the amounts are not the same. And in
Sorry?
fact, the amounts are not the same.
Well, yes, but
And-
sorry, bear with me then, if you would go to it.
Yes.
The amounts may be higher,
Yes,
but if you
the
have a
amounts-
look, just bear with me, at page 129, they deal with the claim, the Mpumalanga provincial government. At 130, at paragraph 28.19, the amount claimed was 45 million. Then they, at 130, deal with the Department of Public Transport, G Fleet. The amount claimed at 28.25 is 40 million. Then a smaller amount, the Department of Public Transport, the amount claimed was 8.3 million. So in respect, I'm just putting this proposition to you, in respect of those claims, that they were compromised simply for the payment of costs. Why now would you feel that it was necessary to settle these claims for 20 million?
I appreciate, Mr. Maibe, you're going into the detail like that. But the fact of the matter is that there had been a legal case, and Abalozi had made a counterclaim, and we had settled in terms of that legal case. I am not sure, and you might know better, if there was anything in law that precluded them to pursue other claims that were falling outside of that case. And I think this is what they were intending to do, and I'm convinced that they were serious. So I don't know if you start comparing the counterclaims and the new claims that they would make. We never went there. We settled before they even opened their mouth, before they even issued summons or whatever, because they went up to 1.4 billion. And I felt that the 20 million was a reasonable settlement. So there is nothing that, even the ones that are listed here, if they found that there were other things that they wanted to add on, they could amend their particulars anytime. I believe that that can be done, and that is usually done. So, Chair, yeah, we did not want to go there.
Mr. Molefe, was this not a wildly inflated claim? I mean, pain and suffering arising from defamation of 700 million.
I do not believe that it was wildly inflated. They had been blacklisted. Their business had been literally almost destroyed.
And that had been compromised for costs. That case was put in their counterclaim.
No. That was that case. These are other cases that they were bringing up.
So as I understand it, it really wasn't a matter of you getting legal advice. It seems that you said, well, they're suing us for 1.4 million, 20 million was 1.4 billion. 20 million is a bargain.
Or is that you patronizing me
Uh,
again?
so,
No.
sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry to interfere with Mr. Maibek's cross-examination. I think it's not fair what he's now doing. Mr. Molefe has given him a full answer on why he settled the claim. He said to him that it was a business case. He in fact said that he felt that given there were two things: the legal opinion that he had, the legal opinion advice from the internal lawyers, and the fact that there was a business reason for him to settle that. I don't understand the role of Mr. Maibek to cross-examine Mr. Molefe on what he has clearly stated. If Mr. Maibek thinks that he's not telling the truth, he must tell him the basis on which he forms that view. But this sounds like cross-examination based on some theory that somehow a settlement of this nature would have been either corrupt or not justified, but the reasons have been given already by Mr. Molefe. I think we should move on and get to the other areas of the questions we need to ask, because this answer has been given. It's given in full. I don't understand why Mr. Maibek wants to cross-examine Mr. Molefe on that aspect, because I don't see what way he's taking us to.
Mr. Maibek, you might wish to...
Chairperson, I really simply want to inquire, was this a business case or was it based on legal advice?
It was both, Mr.
Well,
That's what he says.
Yes. And if it was both, then if that could just be clarified, that's all I'm seeking to achieve.
Yes, okay. Mr. Molefe?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Was
Chair.
it all?
I am giving evidence about the facts as they happen. And I've stated what the facts are. The facts are that they came up with potential claims of 1.4 billion. And I believe on advice from the legal department, the advice was, let's settle. And they had proposed to settle at 40 million, and we settled at 20 million. Those are the facts. If Mr. Maibek doesn't like them, I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask this question. Do you remember whether the legal opinion dealt with the question of whether the claims that had been put up by Abalozi that amounted to 1 billion were inflated? Because if the claims were for 1 point whatever billion, and they themselves, that is the legal department, were suggesting that a reasonable settlement would be 40 million, that suggests to me that they must have thought that these claims were inflated way above what they could get in court.
Well, Chair, it was not a legal opinion as such, in the sense that one would get a legal opinion.
It was not a written opinion, you mean?
No, it was not a written. It was a memorandum, such as one of these.
A memorandum, yeah.
To the group chief executive that says this is the situation that we're in, and our recommendation is that we should settle at 20 million. And I would imagine that in making such a recommendation, they would have considered these legal issues that you're now raising with me. So it was not a legal opinion, it was a memorandum from the legal department. And as I say, the fact that, I asked if we can try and look for it, but we can't find it. The fact that it does not exist, I know that such a memorandum would have preceded my making an offer such as that one.
You see, I would expect that if, as Group Chief Executive Officer, you are faced with the question whether to settle a claim for 1 billion rand or not, and if you must settle it, what amount you must offer. Your legal department says, make an offer at 40 million rand. I would expect that one of the things that would raise questions with you is when these people have claimed 1.4 billion, how do you arrive at 40 million rand and say that's a reasonable thing? What if even the 40 is not based on anything? So in other words, I'm trying to see whether your own legal department conveyed to you something that made you feel comfortable, or whether they just said settle at 40 without really putting before you reasons that would make you think 40 is realistic. It's not a thumbs up.
Chair, I mean, 40 is what they made the offer.
Yeah.
So you would have to ask
Oh, you
them.
mean Abalozi?
Yeah, they said
Your legal department, what did it offer? Say
20.
Oh, it said 20?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I think I mixed up the facts.
Yes,
I thought your legal department said 40, offer 40, and you offered 20.
no, Abalozi said 40. It's in that
Yeah,
letter.
okay, all right.
So I don't know why they jumped from 1.4 billion to 40. You'd have to ask them that.
But it's suspicious, you would agree.
No, I'm not suspicious because it's not as linear as you paint it, Chair. Abalozi may have thought, the sooner we get rid of this matter, because it was even in the press, it releases us to go and do other business. Perhaps if they came here, that is what they will tell you. It releases us and it removes the blacklisting and it unchains our hands.
But
I'm
Mr.
not
Molefe-
saying that is...
Mr. Molefe, if somebody comes and says you owe me 1 billion rand, and then after a few weeks they say, if you give us 40 million rand, we'll accept it. Surely that must be suspicious.
No, it doesn't sound illegal, Chair. It is.
You wouldn't think it's suspicious.
There would be perfect business reasons that
But
I may not be in a position to advance now. That perhaps they could advance. There could be perfect business reasons why they would waive that 1.4 billion. Perhaps they do not want to be seen as having been paid maybe a settlement of 700 or 800 million by Transnet, because that would not be good for the image of their company. I don't know, but maybe if you ask them, they will tell you. But I can imagine, from a business point of view, that decisions like that are possible. Maybe not from a legal point of view, but from a business point of view, Chair.
Yeah, no, I must just tell you.
Business is not linear, Chair. 1 + 1 is not always true.
No, I understand that in some situations, people, whether in business or not in business, when they settle matters, sometimes you don't know their own considerations, what motivates them to settle, and they won't tell the other side because it's their own matters,
Yes.
But for me, if the gap between what they claimed and what they are prepared to settle for is too big, I would think that it's suspicious that it had been inflated, and that's what I
So
would.
Chair, if you were in my position, you would have said this gap is too big. Let's fight. And then you have a 1.4 billion rand claim, and then eventually, let's say you settle at 200 million.
Well,
What will happen in that instance is that there will be a commission like this, where it will
No,
be
there
said,
won't be a commission.
where I will be asked, but you were offered 40 million, and you decided to fight and settled at 300 or 400 or 500 million.
No, it
Why
depends
did you
what you
fight?
do after you don't.
And then
accept.
when they ask me why I fight, I will say because I was suspicious.
No, hang on. Well, you are entitled to be suspicious when you have got reasonable grounds to be. You might reject it, or you might not reject it and delay going back to them and do a certain amount of homework before you then say, we reject it, or we make a counter offer. So all I'm simply saying to me is that you can't say to demand that I pay you 100 million rand.
Yes.
You say, I'm legally obliged to pay you 100 million rand today, and then you come in a month's time or whatever time and say, I will accept 1,000 rand, and then I don't become suspicious.
Yes.
So I say when the gap is too big, for me, it should raise suspicions. But that's my thinking.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mybeck.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to move to a different topic, if I may. Could I ask you, please, to turn to page 147? You were given a 3-3 notice in respect of Ms. Gigaba's affidavit.
Yes.
I want to take you to certain paragraphs which refer to you and just ask you for your comment if you have any, Mr. Molefe. At page 148,
Yes.
paragraph 31.1, and all of these things are things we traversed before. After one of the New Age breakfast sessions, Mr. Gigaba told me that Mr. Brian Molefe was going to be moved from Transnet to Eskom Holdings. I was told this before Mr. Molefe was officially appointed to Eskom. You want to say anything about that?
Yeah, Chair, it takes us to the discussion that we had.
To the issue that you raised.
Yes, that I raised.
Okay.
Mr. Gigaba and Mrs. Gigaba were talking there. I don't know what prompted the discussion. I don't know what was the context. In fact,
Yeah.
one of the things that I noticed is, so what does Mr. Gigaba say about his wife saying this? I mean, does he confirm that the discussion did take place? Did the investigators go and ask Mr. Gigaba, is this true, what your wife is saying about you, and what was the answer? So I'm not in a position to comment on what
Yes.
Mr. Gigaba was saying to Mrs. Gigaba.
Yes.
And then at paragraph 46 at page 150, paragraph 46 deals with, you see from the heading above it, Mr. Gigaba's transfer from the Department of Home Affairs to the Department of Finance. And this is when he was appointed as the Minister of Finance. Ms. Gigaba says at paragraph 46, this change in Mr. Gigaba's portfolio appeared to upset him very much. He informed me that the former president told him that he initially wanted to appoint Mr. Molefe as the Minister of Finance, but finally decided to appoint him, in brackets, Mr. Gigaba, at the request of other NEC members. To comment on that?
No, Chair, I'm not in a position to comment.
And then the last paragraph, which I want to take you to, and I don't think that this is contentious, at paragraph 50 at page 151. Ms. Gigaba says that Mr. Gigaba and I married on 30 August 2014. I did most of our wedding planning. We both invited the former president and the Guptas, but none of them attended. Mr. Molefe was invited and he did attend. You confirm that?
If I may ask, what relevance is this to the commission that I went to Mr. Gigaba's wedding?
Well, I'm just simply putting to you that she says you did. If you don't...
You don't wish to comment?
No, I did attend the wedding, but I have no further comment.
Okay.
Then the next document that I want to take you to very briefly, please, is the document at page 155. Now, this is a recommendation from Mr. Mfikam Kunazi, the then chairperson of Transnet, to Mr. Gigaba on the appointment of the new chief executive. Are you there at 155?
Page?
155. It's right towards the end. When I say 155, I beg your pardon, Mr. Molefe, it's 405.155. So it's right, literally right at the end of your bundle.
Oh, right at the end?
Yeah.
Oh, 405.15. Yes.
Now, what I just want to take you to, if I may, is this. I don't know if you know anything about this, but if you go to page 160, you remember, and I think that we dealt with this last time. I might have mentioned it to you, but I want to show you the document. You recall that we spoke about the fact that, as I recall, Mr. Sharma nominated you for the position of CEO.
Yes,
and he sat on the selection panel.
yes,
And what happened then is a decision was made that because he might have had a conflict of interest because he had nominated you, his scoring would be removed. If you look at page 160, paragraph 4.5, consolidated summary of ratings and rankings of all candidates interviewed for GCE of Transnet after withdrawal of scores of one panelist. What you will see is if you go to the far right-hand side, you'll see overall ranking. Mr. Gansho ranked first at 8.1, then you ranked second at 7.9, and Mr. Selinga ranked third at 6.7. Do you see that?
yes,
And then under the recommendation, the heading, the committee conducted interviews of the shortlisted candidates and have identified 3 recommended candidates who could fill the position. Mr. Gansho, yourself, Mr. Selinga.
yes,
While the overall ratings by the panel member indicated the highest score for, I see it's Dr. Gansho, followed by Mr. Molefe and then Mr. Selinga, the committee believes that all 3 of these candidates are highly suitable for appointment as GCE of Transnet and recommend the appointment of any 3 of the individuals.
yes.
And then the recommended candidates, they put 3 forward. I just wanted to point out to you is if you go to page 163, you will see that Mr. Gigaba in 2010,
Mr.
December
Gigaba.
of 2010 at 163, sent to Mr. Makwenazi guidelines for the appointment of Chief Executive Officer. Those guidelines were attached, and you find them at page 165. I just want to take you to one paragraph and ask you to comment if you want. At page 166, paragraph 2.5, the board shall, through its governance and nominations committee, submit a minimum of 3 shortlisted candidates and their preferred candidate to the shareholder minister for further assessment and interview by the minister. You see that?
Yes,
I just want you to comment if you wish that what you see is that Mr. Makwenazi didn't put forward a preferred candidate. He put forward 3 candidates. Do you have any comment?
no, I think Mr. Mkhwanazi and the board would be best suited to answer.
Thank you. Then I want to just put to you, when we were speaking, or I was leading you in relation to the driver, I think I did mention to you, and I think you corrected me in relation to the witness number. I just wanted to make the point that I noted the other day that witness number 2, and witness number 2 was the CPO to Mr. Gama. Witness number 2 said, on another occasion while waiting for Gama in the parking area at his residence, Brian Molefe arrived with his Audi S8 and went into the house. Talking about the Gupta Saxonwald house. Do you want to comment on that?
Chair, this is one of those things. It was not in the agenda for today. The indication was that we would discuss 3 issues. And in fact, I would have liked to have refreshed my memory and read it again.
Let me show you it. It's in fact something that I think I touched on last time, but we may have got the numbers of the witnesses wrong. If you go behind you and someone will help you fish out the file, it's exhibit BB14 in brackets little d.
Yes. So he says he saw me arrive.
Let me in fairness, let me show you
He
this.
says he saw me arrive.
Yes.
I don't have an Audi S8, never had an Audi S8.
Okay, well then that's your answer. But can I, perhaps in fairness, let me take you, Mr. Molefe, if you'd like. Let me take you, please. I'm referring to the red numbers now, to page 89.
Is that of the same bundle?
No, this is
Different bundle.
This is exhibit BB14, little d, Chairperson. So at page 89, you find witness 2's affidavit. Witness 2 was the CPO to Mr. Garma. All right? If you scroll through this affidavit, you'll get at page 92 a heading, trips to the Gupta residence. You see that?
Yes.
And then witness 2 is outlining the occasions that he says that he took Mr. Garma to the residence. And then at paragraph 14, at page 93, on another occasion, whilst waiting for Garma in the parking area at the residence, Brian Molefe arrived with his Audi S8 and went into the house. He drove there on his own. At the time, he had already been seconded to Eskom as CEO.
Yeah, I have no recollection of this, but I can also say that if this means that Mr. Garma was at the Gupta residence in the same time as I was, that never happened.
Fair enough.
So
I'm sorry, just repeat that.
I have never been, it has never,
Oh, I'm sorry, your mic, just switch it on.
so it has never happened.
Yeah.
That when I went to the Gupta residence, Mr. Garma was also present.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I have no recollection of what he's talking about,
Yes.
but I can categorically say that I've never been there at the same time that Mr. Garma was there.
Yes. Could it be that, well, I don't know how the house there looked like except what pictures that have been shown. Could it be that he could be there, but in another part of the house, and you would not know, and
I don't
he would be
know,
in
sir.
another part of
Yes,
the
I
house?
don't know.
Because
But
your evidence was that, if I recall correctly, you did go to the Gupta residence many times. So
Yes, yes.
if somebody says, on one occasion I saw him arrive,
Yes,
it's possible.
it's possible.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is, because I know that what you may want to read into this was that I was there on a common purpose with Mr. Garma.
Yeah. No,
So we were not,
yeah.
I was not.
No, I don't think that, well, he certainly doesn't seem to
Suggest
to suggest that you were there together. You arrived
Yeah.
on your own. He and Mr. Garma arrived. I don't know whether Mr. Mybeck reads.
Yeah,
it
the thing is
differently.
that in this era of joining dots, any dot can be joined.
Mr. Mybeck?
Yes, I just wanted to echo your comment, Chairperson. I don't think the suggestion by witness 2 is that there's any sort of common purpose. I think he's saying, look, in passing, he saw you there. But you've addressed that. Mr. Molefe, the last thing I want to deal with is the TNA business breakfasts.
Yes.
Now, you were provided on the 26th of March with a copy of what is Exhibit MM4.
Yes.
You will be given a copy now. I just have a few questions to ask you on this, and that's my last topic for the evening.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm just waiting for the chairperson to be handed his file. MM4. Thank you.
I've got
If
the
I could
page
ask you,
number.
if you could perhaps go to page 1, please.
Page?
Page 1. It's a statement of Daniel Patlane.
It's not a. It's not an affidavit.
I think you're
It
correct.
appears
yes.
to be a statement on the face of it.
So this is not a sworn affidavit.
No.
And did he give evidence?
Mr. Patlani gave evidence, yes.
He did give evidence.
So these are things that the Commission is familiar with. I just wanted to...
He gave evidence under oath.
As I understand it, yes.
Yes.
Yes, he did. I assume it was under oath. When you say he did give evidence, I assume it must have been under oath. But, Mr. Molefe, there are not a lot of controversial things that I want to deal with here. Can I just ask you, if you have a look at page 2, what Mr. Patlani does is he sets out just above that, above 3.1, last two sentences. Transnet had 10 ad hoc TNA breakfasts and 5 contracts for TNA breakfasts from 2011 to 2017, which translated to almost 100 TNA breakfasts. And then at 3.1, he lists the ad hoc breakfasts from 11 to 14. There were 10 of them. The cost of that was about 12.5 million, so the breakfast costs about 1.2 million each. And then over the page, he deals with the 5 contracts that were then concluded, the years 12, 13 through to 16, 17, and the number of breakfasts there, if you add up the 16, 15, 20, 20, and 20, comes to 91, and the cost of that was 99.3 million. So there the breakfasts were costing about 1.1 million per breakfast. Then at paragraph 4, he lists the sorts of people that would attend the breakfast, and there's familiar names, Mr. Kigaba, President Zuma, and then it ranged, if you have a look at
Mr. Mutsaledi, Mr. Mashadile,
yes.
Mr. Jeff Hadebe, Minister Dipo Peters, Edna Molewa, Gwede Mantashe, Rob Davis.
It then ranges, what caught my eye, that perhaps is a little...
No, I was just thinking that the examples that you're giving were just convenient.
No, not at all. In fact, I wanted to refer to Graham Smith, who caught my eye. So it was you'll see his name at page 4 in the middle.
Graham Smith, yes, he's a cricketer, yes.
Yeah. So there's a wide range of
Yes.
people. I'm not trying to make anything of any particular individual. I really wanted to just ask you really 2 questions. One relates to, you believe that Transnet got value for money from these very expensive business breakfasts. And then I'm going to ask you 1 or 2 questions about delegations of authority. But deal with, if you could comment on whether you believe this was really value for money, that you paid out from 2011 to 2016, 2017, well in excess of 100 million rand for these breakfasts.
Yeah, Chair, I mean, you would have to exclude 2016 and 17 because I was not there, and that is about 50 million rand. But to come to a determination of whether this was good value for money or not, one would have to make a comparative study of if we had been spending this money elsewhere, engaged in similar activity, how much would we have spent? And to do that, one would have to look at the Transnet's advertising budget. Unfortunately, in preparation for the commission, I tried to look at what the budget was, and I suggest that the commission goes and does that, what the budget was for advertising with the regular media houses. So the Transnet budget for advertising and for what it was. So in one of my affidavits, for example, I showed that some of the adverts that I was against, that Transnet had been putting up, were actually television commercials where a train would come and knock a taxi, and the commercial would last just a minute, or maybe 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, and to say how much for that exposure we got. I mean, how much we paid for that kind of exposure. Unfortunately, because I've left Transnet, I don't have access to that information. But it would be interesting to see how much we paid for those kinds of advertisements, but also for a one-page spread advert that says that railway crossings are dangerous. And so we spent a whole full page on a newspaper saying that railway crossings are dangerous. And we spent a lot of money. In comparison, this was a breakfast show that was on television, and each one of them lasted more than an hour, with the exposure of Transnet's logo, in a similar way that you do with the State Capture Commission behind you. I know you're going to say you don't pay for it, but I'll come to that.
You probably have heard what I've said to certain witnesses about the breakfast shows and the adverts, but I don't want to interrupt you. Finish what you are saying. Yeah.
This was exposure of over 1 hour, and it gave key newsmakers an opportunity to talk at the breakfast show for over an hour about what they were doing and whatever else they wanted to talk about. Something that the media did not voluntarily bring out. For example, the successes that we have had in this country as the government in delivering services, Chair. I mean, there is controversy now about water and electricity and so on and so forth. But in Limpopo, where I have worked, 30, 40 years ago, Chair, the water situation was very bad. People did not have water within walking distance. Now they do. I mean, it's not the best, but now they do. And nobody talks about that. And this is what these people would bring out and make people aware that the situation is not as hopeless as it is. Yes, that is what I wanted to say. That the situation is not as hopeless as it is made out to be by the media. The thing with the media, Chair, is that they control the predominant ideas in society. And they are very negative. And they continue to be very negative. And therefore, the predominant idea, the predominant feeling in South Africa is a negative one. These people would assist in putting into the mainstream news, because a lot of these breakfast shows, after they had been aired, a lot of the issues would then get into the mainstream news. So it went beyond the 1 or 2 hours that we paid for. It also spilled over into the mainstream news, which is what we were looking for. And for the money that we paid, I think that even the other news channels would cover it. I think Mr. Patlani talks about it somewhere in his affidavit, that after the breakfast shows, that some of it would come on to other news. Now, before, Chair, you comment, because I see you're about to comment.
I'm holding myself back.
Yes, before you hold yourself back, let me tell you about an incident. You might realize that I like telling stories. Yeah. So, when I was here, my first hearing, there was a COVID scare, and the hearing was suspended for a few days. And during those days, I also was wondering what is happening, because there was no communication. When are we going back? What's going to happen? And so on. There was a newspaper article where they showed you making an award at some ceremony without a mask, without anything. I could see that this was probably a picture from a long time ago. You see, it was not at that time. But this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So, and I also noticed that the commission never responded. In the minds of people, certain people in South Africa, some people are saying, even on Twitter and so on, are saying, the chairperson suspended the hearings because of a COVID scare and went to an award ceremony of a, can't remember what it was, a primary school or something. Yeah, and I remember last time you said, yeah, you got good coverage because you went to a primary school and so on. But now look at how that coverage, how that picture was used in the media. You see, Chair, if it was this time, I would invite you to the breakfast show to come and explain what happened.
Well, one, I didn't see what were those that information that what they said. If it was social media, probably because I'm not into social media. But if it was what you are talking about, it's something that happened, I think, in 2019. It was the primary school which I attended as a boy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, but...
And it was a good thing, Chair, but it ended up being cast in very bad light.
Yes,
That, in fact, here is Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo giving out awards when he's supposed to be in quarantine. And I felt it was unfair, Chair.
And I was in quarantine. It was an old thing.
But this incident, for me, captures the essence of the attitude of our media. There is no attempt to raise the standards of research and to show. There's a thing in the media, they call it show. If you say something, you must be able to show that it is true. I have had a lot of things said about me that are blatantly not true. And I know that there are a lot of things that are being said even by the government, about the government, even about the president, that are blatantly not true. People are, and the media doesn't care to show. And when it is pointed out to them that, in fact, the article was wrong, the retraction and the apology, usually after it has been to Justice Molefe, the Ombudsman, I don't know if he's still there, it's very small on page 70.
No, that's true. Well, sometimes they refuse, even when they know it's not true. I've had that experience. But I think Mr. Maibek wants to carry on with serious business.
No, but what I wanted to say, Chair, because today is that these people were being given an opportunity to put into the mainstream media, into the news headlines, issues that they think are important and to correct perceptions that are weighing South Africa down with negativity.
Yeah. Mr. Maibek.
Mr. Molefe, just to take an example, how would what Graham Smith had to say about, presumably he spoke about cricket, how would that benefit Transnet as a business?
No, I can't remember, but Graham Smith looks like an outlier here. But I can't remember the context of what he was saying. We would have to watch the thing and maybe we get the answer to your question. If I'd known that you were going to ask that, I would have gone to dig and say, this is exactly what he said.
But take any of these people, they weren't speaking about Transnet, they weren't advancing the interest of Transnet.
No.
They were presumably, and you'd correct me if I'm wrong, they would have their own agendas, they would talk about things that were close to their own hearts. How did that rub off beneficially on Transnet?
But precisely that they are raising these issues of national concern and on a platform that has been provided by Transnet.
Well,
that is the logic.
I must tell you that the evidence that I've had is that sometimes, I don't know whether often or just sometimes, there would not even be anybody from Transnet speaking. And I asked the question, so how would Transnet be benefiting, then I was told that the mere fact that Transnet's logo would show on television, or that it was there, justified, that was quite something justifying.
No, that is not true, Chair. If you call any of the people, including Mr. Patlane, who was involved, they will tell you that before everything started, the sponsor, usually the chief executive officer, would then speak for about 10.
You're speaking too
usually
slow.
those,
I'm sure you spoke too softly. Just repeat.
So I'm saying for every one of them, before it's the breakfast show started, the group chief executive or somebody from the company would then speak for about 10 minutes about the topic of their choice. I can send you some of the speeches that I made there about how we pride ourselves in raising the level of dialogue in South Africa through these breakfast shows, and how it is important that certain things that the media is not interested to communicate are communicated nevertheless, and that we attempt to get these things onto the mainstream media. Yes.
Well, I think if you do have such, it would be important maybe just do an affidavit and attach them, or some of them.
Even better still, Chair, the investigators, if they ask the SABC for every single one of these breakfasts, they will be able to show you the footage.
Yeah,
that is better than me going to look.
Well,
at
it's just that because we are approaching the end of the work of the commission, the life of the commission, we no longer have as many investigators around as we used to, so there is limited resources. So if you can send what you can send, that would be good. But I wanted to say...
But I will send it and submit an invoice as well.
I wanted to say, in regard to what I just told you, namely that I had evidence that sometimes, and I don't know whether it was often, there would be nobody from Transnet speaking. Maybe I should have spoken generally, because I've had evidence about this breakfast in relation to different SOEs. Maybe that evidence didn't relate to Transnet, maybe it related to ESCOM and so on, or SABC. I don't want to be to show that the evidence included Transnet, but I've had some evidence along those lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mybeck.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Molefe, then I just want to take you. There's an attached bundle of documents. It starts at page 8. Could I ask you just to have a look at page 11? It's the cover page of the Transnet Procurement Procedures Manual, PPM. At page 12, right at the bottom, it says sponsorship and donations. You see that they're excluded from this manual, and they are strictly governed by delegated powers. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, the first signed document that we have, document signed by you in this bundle, is to be found at page 18, and it's addressed.
I'm sorry, on which bundle are you now, Mr. Mybeck?
MM4.
Or the most recent one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Page 18.
Page 18, yes.
Okay.
DKP-018. Are you there, Mr. Molefe?
Yes.
It's addressed to you by the General Manager Corporate Affairs, dated 20 March 2012, sponsorship proposal, New Age business briefing sessions. Go to the end of the document at page 20. You will see that the financial implications there for 16 sessions will cost 16 million. And then it deals with how the sponsorship would be financed, etc. And you then sign that, you see, the 23rd of March 2012. And then over the page, one has the accompanying sponsorship agreement.
Yes.
For the amount of 16 million.
Yes.
Now, perhaps I could just take you to the 2012 Delegation of Authority. And if I could ask you to turn to page 167. You'll see at paragraph 5.8.5, the last schedule,
Yes.
headed sponsorship and donations. And if you track the second row, operating division, and then you see the first row, there's GCE, right in the middle.
Yes.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, your level of authority was up to, but not exceeding 10 million
Yes.
for a sponsorship. And then if you read the text at the bottom, approved limits are cumulative per annum. You see that?
Yes.
So your limit was up to 10 million, then the Social and Ethics Committee between 10 and 20, and then the board for anything in excess of 20 million. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So I suppose that if that was the prevailing delegation at the time, in 2012, you didn't have the authority to enter into a sponsorship agreement of 16 million.
Yes. Once again, Chair, I would have to go and research this properly about what happened.
Okay.
Because I think sitting here, I'm trying to answer it now.
Okay, you're speaking too softly.
Yeah.
It won't be recorded.
Yeah, I would want to go to
check.
yeah, because if I had an indication that you're going to ask me about delegations of authority for the sponsorships, I would have had to go and look for the document if I can find it and try and
refresh.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a very thick document. It was given to us timelessly.
Yeah.
But then just an indication that this is what we would like to focus on.
I'm sure, as we have before, Mr. Molefe, with the leave of the chairperson, if you'd like to put in an affidavit after your evidence on this, certainly from the legal team's perspective, we won't have any difficulty.
So you can have time to go and have a look, and then one way would be for you to do an affidavit and say, I've had a look at this, this is my response, or we can arrange for you to come back and say,
No, not coming back.
So I'm giving you options.
No coming back.
But if you want to put in an affidavit, that's fine.
Even an affidavit, I think that the correct people really that can point us in the right direction.
Sorry?
The correct people that can point us in the right direction in terms of these delegations would be either internal audit or the CFO's office. And they can answer that question more professionally. Because even if I go and try and research this thing, I don't have access to the document. And it was not an area of my specialty. So maybe internal audit can be asked, why did you not pick this thing up as irregular expenditure? And maybe they can give a more intelligent answer than I can hope to give.
Well, I hear that part, but at some stage, we need to have your answer to the question whether, as far as you knew, you did have delegated authority or not. So we can check with internal audit and so on, but at some stage or another, one needs to hear from you whether you say you think you were because of ABCD, or you can't remember, or whatever, but there needs to be some answer. And if you say, look, I would need to check something, that's fine. But if you say, look, I do remember, I did have authority, and this is what I say to back it up.
I will go and research it, sir.
Okay, all right, okay.
Chairperson, could I just take an instruction on something for 1 second, please?
Yeah.
Would it be too much to ask for a bathroom break, Chair?
Yes, we can take a bathroom break. Okay, Okay, let's take a 10 minutes adjournment, Mr. Maybeck. Let's take a 10 minutes adjournment. He would like some comfort break.
All right.
Yeah. 10 minutes adjournment. We adjourn.
Mr. Masuku, are you there?
In fact, I can see you, so.
Thanks.
Okay, let's continue. Just switch on your mic, Mr. Mazur.
Sorry, thank you. I've managed to take some instructions from investigators that I want to just retrace my steps and correct something if I may. The agreement that I was questioning you about, you find it page 20. Can you just go there? It's the first sponsorship agreement, and we see that you signed that on the 23rd of March 2012. Would you confirm that?
Yes.
Now, I had taken you to the 2012 Delegation of Authority at page 167, which shows that your authority was up to 10 million.
Yes.
But what we must place on record is if you have a look at page 141, the 2012 Delegation of Authority was approved by the board. You see at page 141 on the 25th of April 2012. Do you see that?
Yes.
So in other words...
I'm sorry. Delegation on page 141, that's the cover page, is that right?
141 is the cover page of the 2012 Delegation of Authority.
Yes.
And page 167 is part of that.
Okay.
So when you signed the document on the 23rd of March 2012. The 2012, as we call it, delegation of authority, had yet to kick in, so as to speak.
Okay.
So the question then is, what was your delegation of authority as of the 23rd of March 2012? And the answer to that, and it's the point that I was getting at, but in a different way, is to be found at page 113. This is the preceding delegation of authority.
Yes.
The 2011 one.
Yes.
And you'll see there that if you turn to page 138, your delegation of authority before the new April 2012 delegation was much higher.
Yes.
At page 138.
Yes.
Paragraph 5.
I can't keep up with your pages, Mr. Mybeck.
Okay, so the 2011 delegation of authority starts, DCJ, at page 113.
Yes.
Included in that is page 138.
Yes, and what does 138 have?
At the top of 138, the first schedule, I think it's paragraph 5.8.5, you will see that Mr. Molefe's delegation of authority, when it came to sponsorship, was 30 million. So
Yes.
in 2011, it was 30 million, and then with effect from effectively the beginning of May 2012, it nosedived
Yes.
to 10 million.
Yes.
Now, with that in mind, I want to take you...
So I don't have to do the
No, you don't, fortunately for everyone. Okay.
supplementary affidavit.
But the point I'm going to make is the one that I was actually driving at, but now in a different way. So we see the first agreement that you sign is styled as a sponsorship agreement.
Yes.
And you see attached to that, if you now go to the beginning, page 21, was a sponsorship agreement. We've been through that before. Let's go to what happened then in 2012, where the now reduced delegation of authority had kicked in.
Yes.
You'll see that the document that you sign now in 2013, where your delegation of authority for sponsorship had reduced to 10 million, in 2013, if you go to page 31, 31, you sign this document, you see, for 2013,
Yes.
and you sign it on the 4th of April 2013, by which time the 2012 delegation, the reduced one, had kicked in.
Yes.
But I just want to draw your attention to the subject. Now, instead of this being called a sponsorship, it was all of a sudden called a partnership. You see that? In the subject line.
Yeah.
And if you go to page 32, paragraph 7, the partnership will cost 15 million.
Yes.
So if it was still styled a sponsorship, you wouldn't have had the delegation of authority, but now it's a partnership, and you do.
In fact, it's advertising, because you'll see that it will come out of the public affairs advertising budget.
But, Mr. Molefe, how do you explain the change from first year it was a sponsorship, the next year is it a partnership? Is
Okay.
it just coincidental? Has it got nothing to do with your reduced delegation of authority?
Then I'll have to do a supplementary affidavit
All right.
to go and find out how that happened.
Because if you look at page 33, now the agreement was a partnership agreement.
Advertising. It says advertising partnership agreement. So it's a branding and advertising.
But I think simply the proposition, and you're free to put in an affidavit if you wish to. The question is, was it just coincidental?
It's in ones, because it says branding and advertising partnership agreement. You choose to focus on partnership and not on branding and advertising.
But it was a
I
sponsorship.
don't think, Mr. Molefe, I don't think that for Mr. Maybeck's proposition, it matters that there is advertising before partnership. I think what he is comparing is a sponsorship and a partnership, even if it's an advertising partnership. That's what he, Mr. Maybeck, is that correct?
Yes, certainly.
Yes.
But the sponsorship, wasn't the sponsorship also a partnership?
Well,
In a
that's,
sense.
he's giving you an opportunity to explain that, to say, why is it that when it was called a sponsorship, why is it that it was called a sponsorship at a certain time, and this was the delegation, when there was a change of the delegation, suddenly its characterization also changed, and then
To
it fitted
advertise.
into a partnership.
No, the
Now, as we said, you are free to emphasize that it was an advertising partnership. You are not precluded from, because you may know, you would know what point it brings up, but he's giving you a chance to explain the difference. But if you say you want to put it in a supplementary affidavit, that's fine.
Okay. In English. I must write the affidavit in English.
Mr. Molefe.
You see, Mr. Molefe, perhaps I could...
You don't
sorry.
suggest that you can't explain this in English. Mr. Maybeck.
If we go to 2014, for example, at page 44, you will see that the new age, they're still talking about wanting you to, they're offering you a sponsorship. And then what you see at page 46 in 2014, if you have a look at page 47, paragraph 8, it's deliberately, it seems, styled a partnership. Now, of course, a partnership would, I assume, have been a standard contract, would I be correct, financed through the department's budget, and you would have been able to approve it. Is that correct?
Come again?
A sponsorship would have been a partnership of that sort would have been a contract that would have been financed through the department's budget, and you would have been entitled and had the power to approve it, correct?
If it was a sponsorship.
If it was a partnership. We know if it was a sponsorship, you wouldn't have, because it exceeded your delegation of authority.
Yeah, but can you please give me an opportunity to go and reconsider this and write it properly, because it says from the advertising budget, and it is a branding and advertising activity, as we saw it. And I think that even Mr. Patlani's memo somewhere there will probably explain it, because he was from the branding department, not partnership.
Chairperson, we have no further questions. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's all right. Well, before I let Mr. Masugu re-examine, if he's going to re-examine, I must just raise this issue going back to the value of these breakfast shows for Transnet. I just want to say one of the issues that I tried to get one of the witnesses, I think it may have been a Transnet witness, to explain about the importance of this advertising, if it was advertising, but I think he sought to explain it that way, was bearing in mind what Transnet's business is, what Transnet is about, and I can't claim to know everything that Transnet gets involved in. Obviously, you would know. I didn't understand why it would be necessary to spend this kind of money for nothing more than simply to say, at least that's how I understood it from one of the witnesses, to say we just want to get people to have a positive image of Transnet. I think whoever the witness was even talked about saying, well, Transnet may wish to attract certain professionals to look at employment at Transnet, and if Transnet has a bad name, that's not good. It can't attract those people. It may be my lack of understanding about branding and so on, but I said to him, I can understand if a company in the private sector, which, for example, sells some products to the public, spends a lot of money on advertising in order to get a lot of customers. But I was thinking Transnet, generally speaking, as far as the public is concerned, I think provides certain services, and as long as those services, that service is good, generally speaking, people would use those services. But of course, my knowledge might be outdated because Transnet has been broken up into different entities over the time. But that was part of my concern. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's a marketing thing.
I think that's what they said too.
Yeah, in marketing and branding. The most important thing about a brand is when somebody, a man in the street, average person, sees the brand, what first comes to mind? That is what you want to achieve as a brand. What first comes to mind when you see the brand? Now take Transnet. Transnet does not provide services to people like you and me. It provides services to big corporates. Big corporates, we transport their containers on rail to the port. We load them onto ships and they export. So these are big businesses. But every day people see a Transnet train passing in the neighborhood on the way to Saldanha or on the way to Richards Bay. So when they see the Transnet logo, what does it evoke in their mind? And that is what the fight is about. It's not about telling people about your services. I see Nando's. I'm going to say something wrong again. They hardly ever talk about, okay, they talk about how nice their chicken is, but they usually they tell jokes. And when people think about Nando's, they think about a fun brand, a brand that, more than the amount of salt that they put on the chicken and the peri-peri that they put, they make it a fun thing. So Nando's is about fun. You might not know that McDonald's actually makes very little money from hamburgers. They make money from property. But they hardly ever talk about property. And that is their business model, you see. So branding is about what the brand evokes, right? So in the context of South Africa, which is a developmental state, the Transnet brand that certainly when our CEO wanted to evoke was a company that is involved, that is concerned about the fact that maybe there is no water in a certain community, or that a company that gave the community an opportunity to understand the problems in the Department of Water Affairs. Because people would also call into this breakfast, just from all over the country, and ask questions that they would like to ask. But in the end, that leaves an impression in their minds of the brand. Because otherwise they would not, okay, now they will see a train, but at least they can associate the train with
something good.
With something good, yes.
Okay. Mr. Masugu, do you have any re-examination?
Deputy Chief Justice, happily, I have maybe two questions.
Yes. Okay, that's fine.
If you, yes. The first question that I would like to ask Deputy Chief Justice is, Mr. Molefe, do you believe that you manage the Transnet business or the ESCOM business in order to advance the private interests of anybody?
No, Chair. And in fact, on reflecting about this, and listening to the President talk over the last 2 days, the frustration that I have is the frustration of a foot soldier.
Of
Of a foot soldier who is out there trying to do their best under very difficult circumstances. And then people come and they criticize the trench. And they say this trench could have been 6 meters wider or 2 meters smaller. And why did you use this ammunition and not that ammunition? And yet you were fighting in the heat of battle and responding to the demands of the battle. I mean, the President was here talking as a commander that we deploy and so on and so forth. But the foot soldier, what did they do when they are confronted with certain situations? And the other frustration is this commission, for example. It has chosen a particular narrative and the family and their involvement in Transnet and ESCOM, and ignored others. And I ask myself, why these particular issues and this particular family? There are other families that also did things with these entities. There are other families whose behavior qualifies with the definition of state capture, but there's no interest in that. Classic example, the locomotives tender. It was not to the Chinese only. The Americans were there, the Canadians were there, the Germans were there. But the focus was on the Chinese because there is a particular narrative and interpretation and understanding of state capture. Let me give you an example, Chair. In the 1930s, there was a famous painter here in South Africa called Pirniev.
Who?
Pirniev. Mm-hmm. Yeah, his paintings are very expensive. They go into the hundreds of millions. In fact, one of Ace Mahashule's bodyguards has been sentenced to 15 years for removing a Pirniev painting from the Free State government building. In the 1930s, the CEO of
But before you go there, Mr. Molefe, because I think you go there in pursuit of whatever it is to support the issue of the narrative, let me remind you that as you recall, this commission came about as a result of a report of the public protector at the time. The issues that the public protector said should be investigated by this commission related almost exclusively to the relationship between the Gupta family and the president and the executive and so on and so on. So in other words, the public protector had in mind that those are the issues that this commission should investigate. However, when the terms of reference for the commission were made by the then president, Mr. Zuma, the terms of reference were much wider, which meant the commission could look into other families and so on, okay? So when the commission started, it went on the basis that its terms of reference were wide. But you will recall that the public protector had said the commission should finish its job within 6 months. So we took the view that it was impossible. So we asked for an extension. But after about a year and a half, we realized that there was no way we would finish within a reasonable time if we continued to use these wide terms of reference. And when we applied for an extension of the period of the term of the commission at the end of 2019, we said to the court, since the whole idea of the commission from the public protector was really about this family, we would focus from then going on the issues that the public protector had identified. But we said whatever we had started, we'd try and finish.
Yes.
So I thought, let me just mention that.
Chair, my understanding of the genesis of the public protector's report is that Glencore went to complain that ESCOM is squeezing them to sell the mine to the Guptas. And without investigating it any further, she took it as the gospel truth and wrote the report without even asking us exactly what was happening. And I've tried to address that issue here, and very little attention was in fact paid to that issue by the commission. In fact, the commission went on to SASA and other things. And that is why my story of the Pirniev paintings, Chair, if I could finish it.
Finish it, yeah.
Yes, the Pirniev paintings. The CEO of Transnet in the 1930s commissioned the Pirniev paintings, what they call the station paintings, which was Pirniev paintings about Johannesburg railway station. Those paintings are very, very expensive at the moment. They belong to Transnet, but they have been given to Mr. Johan Rupert to look after, and they are in a private museum in Franschhoek. When I was there, I tried to go and look at how we can get them back or some other arrangement and so on and so forth. So why is that issue not of interest? If Bosasa is of interest. I'm not saying there was corruption. In fact, I think there may be a legitimate loan agreement with the foundation. But it is a family that had an interaction with Transnet, whose activities the commission was not interested in. I'm not trying to implicate anybody in anything. I'm just making an example.
Yes, but you didn't also, Mr. Molefe, you didn't in 2018 and 2019, when I went on TV and radio, said anyone who has information that could fall within the terms of reference and has got information, they must bring that information. You didn't bring that issue, that information to the commission.
Would you have investigated it, Chair?
Well, if you had given it to us and we hadn't, you would have a better case, but you didn't.
No, I actually do not. I was just making an example. I did not want you to investigate it.
All right.
Yeah, I was just making an example that there is a myriad of issues that go beyond that could have been investigated. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. You have answered to Mr. Masugu's question. Mr. Masugu?
The last question. Mr. Molefe, you've appeared in the commission, I think, more than 4 times, if I'm not wrong, to deal with a myriad of issues relating to decisions that were taken, governance matters that were involved, that you were involved in when you served in Transnet and in ESCOM. Do you feel that in the times that you have engaged with the commission, you have engaged the commission on your role, do you feel that you now have a better grasp of what state capture really is?
No, actually, state capture is one of those things that happen all the time, everywhere. I just feel that there was a convenient use of the term to probe certain things in a bigger fight.
Just go closer to your
In
mic.
a bigger fight. There was a fight that was going on, and the parties to the fight decided to use a particular set of events. And the other party that was also involved in the fight could have used another set of events, and we would still be here. So I feel like it was a tactic that was being used, that we would get this term and so on. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we're trying to get to corruption, but we're just looking at corruption of a particular type. The fact that Glencore was trying to extort 470 rand per ton is a particular type in my books. The risk of being sued with 1 billion rand sued from Glencore, a particular type of unacceptable behavior that I felt did not promote a particular narrative, did not promote a particular side of the fight. And my feeling is that I think it's a pity that we did not try to go to the core of state capture itself, if we wanted to, or corruption. What has been unearthed here is just a tip of the iceberg.
Well, let me say this, I'm sorry, Mr. Masuku. Let me say this. I do think that what the Commission has unearthed is indeed the tip of the iceberg. We did not touch, we did not deal with municipalities, and there are many provincial government departments we didn't get to. There are many national departments that we didn't get to. So indeed, on that score, that what the Commission has looked at will be a tip of the iceberg, I would agree. But going back to the question you raised about why, about what you say is Glencore's extortion of Eskom, let me say that you may or may not have realized, or well, actually last time you appeared here, or even before that, you were the one who drew my attention to a question that I had raised some time earlier about whether they had done due diligence and all of that. You know?
Yes.
Subsequent to your being here, well, I don't know whether subsequent, but I think probably subsequently, I said to the legal team, they need to get Mr. Efron, I think that is his name, Mr. Efron.
Yes, Clinton Efron.
To put up an affidavit and deal with this issue. And subsequently, an affidavit was filed by him. And if it was not sent to you and you would like to see it, I think the legal team relating to Eskom can consider that. But he has dealt with it in a certain way. And I had said to the legal team that deals with the Eskom work stream, they must consider calling him back to come and deal with such questions. So I'm just mentioning what happened that you might not be aware of.
What I'm aware of is that he made a statement subsequent to my evidence, not an affidavit.
Well, maybe it might not be an affidavit, it might be a statement.
It was a statement that was not under oath, in which he denied that
Yes.
Mr. Ramaphosa had been chairman of of...
Yes, but let's deal with one issue at a time.
Yes,
The
I'm just saying
extortion
that-
now. So I'm saying that I've said to the team, to the legal team that deals with the ESCOM work stream, they must consider calling him to come and take an oath
yes,
and
okay.
deal with that issue.
Yes.
So I was just mentioning that so that you know that it wasn't left at you just saying there is this and nothing was done.
But maybe Mr. Glazenbeck, Chair. Mr. Glazenbeck.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Glaze, I don't know about that aspect, but we have gone to, the commission has gone to Mr. Glazenbeck about other issues, and he filed some affidavit, and he was asked from the reports I've received whether he would be prepared to come and testify, and I was told that apparently he was not either available or keen, but that was in relation to something else, not necessarily this. Anyway, Mr. Masugu, was that your last question?
Yeah, well, there's just one issue I just thought I would ask Mr. Molefe to clarify.
Yes.
A question from Mybeck, which was just glossed over, relating to an allegation that you may have visited the Gupta family driving in an Audi S8.
Yeah.
Right. Have you ever owned a car like that in your life?
No, I've never owned an Audi S8.
Okay.
And Chair, there's another matter that I would like to have an opportunity to explain further.
Sorry?
There's another matter that I would like an opportunity to explain further by way of an affidavit.
David.
Yes, and and a properly considered affidavit.
Yeah, is that in relation to
Transnet.
to Transnet?
Yeah. The
Okay.
increase. The increase
Yeah.
from 20-something billion, 38 billion,
To 54.
4 billion, is not an increase, not even in accounting literature. It's a variance. It's a difference between budget and actual, and not an increase in anything. So, and I would like to go and write what you call the difference between a budgeted amount and an actual amount. It's not an increase. But I would like to explain it in more detail, properly, academically researched.
Mr. Mybeck, I don't think there should be any problem with that.
No,
Do you think?
except
Yeah.
I perhaps would ask Mr. Molefe to consider whether Mr. Singh isn't more than able to deal with that.
Yes. But
And perhaps he could listen to
Okay,
But-
let's leave it to Mr. Singh then. I'm sure he can explain it. He's a
yeah, well, I just don't want a situation where you feel you were prevented from explaining something that you wanted to explain.
No,
in
I
case
think
Mr. Singh doesn't explain it satisfactorily.
I'll leave it to Mr. Singh, but just check.
Okay.
An increase and
Yeah.
a variance are two different things.
No, that's fine. But, well, if you say you leave it to Mr. Singh, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Masugu, are you done?
No, Chairperson, I think that
You're
those are the
done.
questions I would have liked to ask Mr. Molefe. But given that I'm speaking over I'm engaging the commission virtually, in case
Yes.
I'm missing something,
Yes.
could I ask Mr. Molefe
Yeah.
to on his own,
Yeah.
deal with an aspect that he believes I may have missed,
Yes.
to ask him?
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for your cooperation. And thank you to the staff and the technicians. Thank you to Mr. Molefe's legal team. Mr. Molefe, thank you for your cooperation. And thank you, Mr. Masugu. Thank you, Mr. Mybeck and your team. We will adjourn now, and tomorrow I will be here for the benefit of the public. I'll be hearing the evidence of Mr. Gama. We adjourn.